the only thing you know for sure is that things are going to change.
This episode is dedicated to Grandma Barb, who passed away on Saturday, October 3rd. If you're familiar with this podcast, you know a new episode comes out every week unless there's a good reason for it. This time, it was for Grandma Barb, someone we love very much and will miss incredibly deeply. In honor of Grandma Barb, I'm going to read a short excerpt from her funeral, the eulogy written by and read by, at the time, her son and my dad, Greg. My mother was a nice lady. That seems like a simple statement, yet, like her, as you dig deeper, there's more than you might first expect. She was not a loud or brash person, and she didn't need to be the center of attention. Yet, in every aspect of her life, she led by example. You could always depend on her for a kind word, a chuckle, and a you can do it spirit. Us kids were very fortunate to be raised by a mother who taught us right from wrong and how to treat people. She showed us the virtue of hard work, and she instilled in each of us the confidence that anything was possible in our lives. That's a gift which keeps on giving. She was very compassionate. Whenever you messed up in life, and there were some real doozies on both sides of the family, Barb was the first one you called. You knew, though, when you talked with her, there would be no screaming, no stern lectures. She listened without judgment, then calmly described some possible ways to handle the situation. Then you figured out how not to do it again. Barb, Barbara, Barbie, Mrs. Branstetter, Aunt B, Grandma, Mom. We miss you, we love you, and you'll always be part of our thoughts and actions. Thank you for all that you did for us. Again, those are my dad's words to his mother and my Grandma Barb. Now, for this week's episode, which I know Grandma would have loved. This week's guest is Lars Silberbauer, and he was essential in turning Lego, yes, Lego, from essentially zero social media presence to the number one brand on social media, according to Adweek. Enjoy the show. Alrighty, we are here with Lars Silberbauer, the amazing digital marketing leader who has spent some pretty cool time at Lego, among other things. Lars, how you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you, Max. I'm really good.
Great. Well, thanks for joining. And to start off, I know I'm not the only person in the world to have this experience by a long shot, but I grew up on Legos, and just seeing the word Lego, the name Lego, the brand Lego, and thinking of all the experiences, I get struck with such a crazy amount of nostalgia there. Did you aspire when you were younger to work at such a cool brand? How did that shake out?
I didn't even think I was aspiring to work at Lego. I think it was just too much out of reach. I remember participating in a Lego building contest with my brother, I think, and we won a prize, an award. I don't know if everyone who participated in the competition actually won an award, but we were so proud of having achieved that amazing thing about receiving an award from Lego. So I think it was unobtainable at that point. So I never really thought about that. But the way it came about was pretty much that most of my youth, I worked in the music industry and basically were playing music all the time. Went to New York to live the first time when I was 20, and then came back to a job at working at one of the biggest TV and media corporations in Scandinavia called Danish Broadcasting Corporations. And after having spent and worked my way up the ranks there, I applied for a job, and it was a tough competition again, probably as tough as the first building competition to actually get the job. But then I started Lego and was charged with basically building their social media presence, YouTube presence, a lot of the digital presence in general, globally, basically from scratch.
Seems just like an easy job. I mean, you can do that in your sleep. When you were working in the music industry, what drew you to that world in the first place?
Coming from like my background and my father's background being a conductor and a musician himself, it was not like a choice. When you're 5, you will learn the piano. When you're 10, you will learn another classical instrument, and when you're 15, you will be able to pick whatever instrument you want to play on top of the two others. So it's not like it's just something you're born into, and you, before you realize it, you know how to play a lot of instruments, and you're basically embedded into that culture, which I today appreciate a lot, because you learn a lot about, not just about creativity, but also like a symphony orchestra or a band. It's a very, very disciplined. If you want to be good, you need to be extremely disciplined, and you need to practice, and you need to really practice and to be perfect, and to really go after perfection. And then I've used that many times later on. But it's a privilege to be born into kind of like the music scene, or basically, or just knowing about music.
And I'm very jealous because I've learned some instruments over the years, but I would bet you know how to play just a bit more. What is the range? Can you just shout out some examples of instruments that you enjoy playing a lot?
So I started the piano. That's what you do, and then I took up the trumpet, so played in a lot of classical orchestras, and then I picked up the bass, the electric bass, and the upright bass myself, and that's probably what I enjoy the most. So I've been touring with big bands, and of course had my own a number of bands in different genres and styles back in the days. Unfortunately, it's difficult to live a global lifestyle with traveling with an upright bass. It takes a considerable amount of space in an airplane to bring that with you.
I would think so. Yeah. So you have this background in the music and we'll just call it the creativity and entertainment world. Lego, I think, has one of the strongest brand histories and efficacy and in reputation. But when you joined, can you describe what the social media landscape looked like when you first started at Lego?
Yeah, I can easily do that, because there was nothing. Like, there was not even a Facebook page. There was no Twitter. There was nothing, and this was in 2011. So, like, social media was already happening a lot back then. So it was weird for a company like Lego not to be having any presence at all. And I think it was because Lego, as no matter how you look at it, it's a creative company, but it's also rooted in, I would say, the outskirts of Denmark. And in that area, you don't take a lot of risks. You do not want to be the first mover. And I think, being a very risk averse company grounded in that culture, I think it was natural for Lego to stay away from that new digital thing until a moment where they realized, guys, we need to be there, because the kids are definitely on YouTube and the parents are definitely on social media. So if we don't want to be left behind, we need to really move aggressively into the space.
It's crazy to think about having such a powerful and historic brand. And then all of a sudden, this area that is completely new to the brand is just like blowing up all around the world. And all of a sudden, you're behind in a sense. It's a really crazy dynamic there. When you were tasked with putting Lego on the map, which obviously you did way more than putting it on the map, what were your first priorities?
It was definitely to create a buy-in from the board of directors, and to make sure that the C-suite, or the CEO, the CFO, everyone there would actually buy into the whole idea. And also to show people, because you can't tell them. You need to show them that this is actually something that works. There are consumers at the other end of that Facebook message or Facebook post that are responding. So I did that by basically doing educational courses and workshops, not just with the employees that were actually had to do the social media, but especially with the top management. And it was typically like a day or 2 day workshop, where they would basically be put through a test, and both a theoretical exam where they would have to answer a lot of questions about Facebook's algorithm and so on, but also a practical test where they had to write a Facebook post to the main Facebook page that Lego had. And just seeing those top tier executives putting together like a brief sentence or whatever, and they were kind of like shaking when they had to press the button, and they asked me always like, so this is actually going out to millions of consumers right now, millions of our fans on Facebook. It's like, yes, it is. And then they actually started becoming quite nervous, because I realized that they've never been in a situation where they have communicated to millions of people, millions of consumers, with their own words in that instant and instant moment. And when they did it, and suddenly they saw the number of likes, like they were getting like 1,000 or 2,000 likes within 10 minutes, and tons of comments, then they realized this is actually like communication with your core consumers and your core fans that is instant. And there's actually like completely clear connection between what they said and the impact that they did with the consumers. And then for those who had that experience, I really could see that they were changing, and their whole perception of social media from something that, oh, that's a new thing, that's the next thing, we don't really care about it, we need to buy our way out of it. And then they really understood that this is something different, and this is something that actually will change and has changed the whole way that brands are communicating, how consumers are communicating about brands, and how you need to behave as a brand before you can succeed in today's market or marketplace.
I think that's a good lesson for whether it's social media or trying out something else. Whenever there's something new, like the new sexy platform or new sexy marketing channel that you hear so much buzz about, it's really hard to get a full grasp on what it really is and what it means to be in that space until you try it yourself. So that's brilliant that you and the team had the executives firsthand experience these things. It's crazy to think about, an executive being nervous for a Facebook post, but this is totally new territory for them. And you mentioned the millions of fans or followers on the brand's accounts. What was involved in building those up? I mean, starting with new accounts.
It's a fun story actually, because when I came into Lego, there were a couple of Facebook pages already out there, and there was one of them which had around 900,000 fans. And it was back in the days where actually organic reach was still something you could actually rely on.
Right. Oh,
So
those were the days.
those were the days, yeah. But no one owned this page, and it was before you could see an admin on the page, and you couldn't really figure out who it was. So we found this page, and it was basically a dead page, like no one posted on the page anymore, but it still had 900,000 fans, and we would actually really like to get in touch with them. But Lego had given up in reaching out. But together with a couple of friends, we did a bit of detective work on the page, and a couple of friends from an agency that I worked with at that time basically took it on them, and we tried together to really figure out, based on the pictures that was uploaded on the page, which person was behind this page, and if we could contact him. So we looked through hundreds of pictures on the page, and in one of them we saw a university diploma, or at least some of the university diploma with some of the name of a person. And then we tried to cross-check and search our way through and found the university, and finally we were down to like 2 or 3 people that had went to that university with the same part of that name. And then we found a guy who, by basically looking at his pictures on another website that represented a couple of Lego bricks, we could see that those Lego bricks were from the same sets that the pictures on the Facebook page was.
No
So
way.
then we basically made the assumption, this is the guy, and then we reached out to him, and then we asked him like, what can we do for you? We would really like the page and take control over the page, and we can see you're not using it anymore. Can we invite you to Legoland? Can we invite you to come to Denmark? And this guy was fantastic. He was just like, no, this is not my page. Like, I just created it. This is because I'm a Lego fan. It is Lego's page. And then he basically just gave me admin rights and deleted himself. So this was just like, boom. That
Wow.
was a good start.
You guys are the Lego detectives. Who knew that you need like a detective background as well? And to get these accounts that would become so big for you.
Yeah, and but I really like those old days in social media. Now you would just contact Facebook, and then they would just like hand the page over to you. You had to put a bit more effort into it back then. I think it was a bit more a community than it was a marketing platform.
Definitely, definitely. And I'm sure I know that in terms of the content that you're putting out, you tried out a number of things and had plenty of different, a wide range of engaging opportunities for fans of the brand, which again, it's like hard to think of somebody who doesn't like Lego. But what are some of the social media strategies or tactics that you actually used that you look back most fondly of and that actually had the most payoff for you?
I think it was actually not social media strategies. It was more about leadership strategies or management strategies or leadership styles, and how to build teams, because you can't run social media and YouTube and everything else for a company the size as Lego. It's in plus 65 markets. It have so many different audiences. You cannot do that like one guy or 10 guys or 10 girls or whatever. You need to have a big team put in place, and that team needs to impact the rest of the organization, and it needs to be having a different mindset than a traditional organization. You need to be working extremely fast. In digital media, you need to move at the pace and hopefully faster than the consumer behavior is developing. And you can't do that with traditional top-down management and leadership style. Like, you need to empower your team. You need to spend a lot of time upfront educating your teams in the brand DNA, making sure that they can take individual actions on the challenges that they're met with without having to run everything up the flagpole for a decision. And to create that kind of independence in a team and empowerment, I think that's a critical thing that you need to do. Because then if you do it the right way, then the things that you need to focus on is more setting the direction, listening to what your team is saying, what the rest of the organization is saying, helping that mindset, pushing the rest of the organization, instead of spending your time controlling your team. So I think it's about really separating what your role is as the leader, what your team is doing, and making sure that it is a collaborative unit where each individual role, but it's all about having the same mindset about really moving fast and being extremely agile, and also knowing that in this business, the only thing you know for sure is that things are going to change. And if you look at change as something that is dangerous and disruptive and it might impact you in a negative way, then you have the wrong mindset. Instead, if you're working with a unit and a mindset that says like every time things are changing, that's a new opportunity. That's something we need to be excited about, and we need to play around with the new ideas that might bring into play. Then we're actually in the right space, and then things like all of the smaller stuff will solve itself, and will not become issues, because you have the right mindset, you have the right setup, and you have the right structure in the teams.
Yeah, so much of it goes back to mindset, and you need to make sure that you're ready as a company, as a brand, to even do these things, to execute these fun ideas that are new and in a new territory.
I've always like reiterate it and try to push my teams. It's like, we're not supposed to be good at social media. That's not what we're practicing right now. That's not what we're doing right now. What we're doing right now is to be good at change, and good at handling change and adapting to change, and creating change, because that is what's happening in the digital space. And that's exactly like in 2020. I think the companies, the organizations, the people that have been good at adapting to and taking advantage of change, those are the winners in 2020. And who knows what 2021 is gonna bring? But I'm sure it's again, what we know for sure is going to be different.
Yes, change always the only constant. And I think at Lego, what's so fascinating is you have such a historic brand story. Like you have a reputation and a rich history that is constant and that's been building and building over the years. But taking that and throwing it onto new platforms and new forms of digital marketing, it takes a certain kind of approach to make sure you celebrate the old, but also unleash new things. So, what's something that you think before Lego started embracing digital would have never really been a feasible marketing campaign or project as a company? But since you did kind of rally the troops and get everybody in the digital mindset, actually became a big success for you in the digital world.
I think it's important to realize that my guess would be that there's not any company where everyone is on board with everything, and that there's only one way of looking at things and one approach to things. I think all companies is always perhaps not a struggle, but there's of course different opinions about how things should be perceived and how things should be developed and pushed forward, and especially if it's an area that is disruptive and is about to change. Some people get it sooner than others, and I think that's also the struggle when you're in a development area like digital. That's always the struggle that you're in when you work with traditional brands that have this legacy, and they have this they have a love brand, but that's also built on a very traditional way of thinking that does not change well. That has pros and cons because it's also about like really taking care on the brand DNA, about the culture in the company, but at the same time changing. And I think that's always the battle that those big brands are finding themselves in, and that's definitely also true at Lego. It was a constant battle between like pushing things forward and then also having to pull people with you, making sure that you didn't get too far ahead of the rest of the organization. So you might have been able to do more fantastic and innovative projects, but you still had to keep at least some part of the organization with you on that journey. So I think it's never like a company is never fully committed. It's always a struggle between different groups and stakeholders inside the company.
I think that's a great distinction there. And what's a moment you look back on as one of your proudest moments at Lego?
I think it was one of the times where we gathered the entire team, my team, because I had a team in Shanghai, a team in Singapore, a team in US, a team in London, and a team in Denmark, and gathered, I think, 70 people who were from literally all parts of the world with different cultures, background, huge diversity. I think that was one of my proudest moments because then you can feel when you bring together a professional but extremely diverse group that has the same openness about learning, about developing, about innovating, then you have like a really a strong group that can make a huge impact because they're gathering all kinds of ideas and thoughts from all over the world and bringing that to the same table with the same purpose and the same clear direction about how to drive a company forward. And I think that was when I felt, having started that team just myself and ending up in a team where you would have that togetherness and commitment to driving that forward. I found that was probably my proudest moment.
Adweek named Lego the number one brand on social media out of any brand. What do you think is the reason you've been named that top honor?
I think it's because we were very innovative and we managed in a very short time to come from not even far behind, but not even in the game, to be taking the brand with keeping the brand DNA. And I think that's really the challenge, to keep the brand DNA, but still keep that at the forefront of innovation and pushing that together with partners like Facebook and Snapchat and Google and YouTube and all the other platform partners that we work with. But it was not the money that got us into making innovative projects with them. It was because that we also were building a creative team that we actually be able to work closer together and drive new innovation in that space. And I think Lego should always be there because it's a creative brand and they should be at the forefront of creativity and playfulness. And I think that is probably what made that impact, and that was recognized by Adweek and a lot of others, but mostly importantly, and it was recognized by a lot of consumers who started to take part in those experiences that we created, and sometimes they even bought more Lego, which is of course very fortunate.
Just time. Maybe just a time or two. Let's switch gears a little bit. Let's get to a segment on inspiration and creativity. And you mentioned playfulness. So I'm curious on your end, what do you do? It could be in your free time or it could be something that overlaps with work. What do you do to make sure that you are staying playful, keeping that quote unquote mind of a child, that creativity there?
Well, I buy a lot of new gear, like new stuff. I like whenever a new device comes out, I'm definitely going to be there, and I'm going to play with my brother. Like we just when the Oculus Rift came out, or sorry, yeah, the Oculus Quest came out. I was very impressed about the Oculus Quest because it was the first time a VR device was actually in just one device, and you could just put it on, and it just worked. And my brother lives in Denmark, and I live in New York, so it was an easy way for us to buy that device, and suddenly we were playing together as if we were kids. So I think it's about really just throwing yourself at something, new projects, new things, carve out some time, and just start learning stuff, and do the things that you did when you were a kid. Try things out, make a lot of mistakes, and then get on with it. I think there's too many people that just like are waiting for that they can buy a course somewhere. They can go to a master. They can buy a masterclass course in that, or they like. There's enough tutorial videos on YouTube to teach yourself pretty much anything. And if not, then you can start doing that tutorial. So I think it's just about having a mindset where you just start doing things and learn yourself and teach yourself how to do new things. I love that.
You mentioned new gear, and even, in your example, it's like the new cutting edge virtual reality gear. How do you stay up to date on like what's like the hottest new gear out there? I mean, do you have sites or favorite kind of sources you go for information on that?
I think it's more like a network thing. So when you see your social network is doing, when you hear recommendations from one of the early adopters, then you just go with it. Just if he believes it's that good, I believe he's a great guy. Buy it. Just try it. Or yeah, it's just again, just do things, borrow things, try to investigate where things are, and just try them out. And I think also it's not about trying the newest thing. It's also about finding out where your interest lies, and just go where you feel things are going, and not where everyone else is saying it's going. Because I can tell you, when I started social media, it was like you were being ridiculed, and I'm sure a lot of other in the tech space have tried the same thing, because they were moving into space that no one else thought was interesting at all, and that later on meant luckily that they were first movers. So I think it's about finding your passion, and then just go with it.
And what are you passionate about outside of this new gear category? What are your favorite hobbies or things you like to do in your free time?
I still do really love music, but I also love all of those borderline areas where it's like with music combined with visuals, combined with something else and something else, in any form of shape. So for instance, like all of the new stuff that's coming, and it's becoming available about how to like VJing, where 10 years ago it was really difficult, it was very demanding, and now you can play around with things, make them look cool live, just like doesn't take a lot of effort, and that makes it easier for you to become creative and into the content. I find that's quite amazing, and an amazing journey that's been on the part of the creative tech in the last 15, 20 years. I remember like just being able to produce music on a computer, that was incredibly difficult, and you basically had to build your own computer and overclock the computers, and sometimes you would just like kill a motherboard or a RAM socket, and now you can get pretty much anything very consumer friendly, and you can actually start creating.
Right. Which is a beautiful thing to be able to create with so little friction
So
compared to what
little
it used to be.
friction, but the challenge is that then you don't have any constraints, and it's good to have constraints if you want to be creative. It's like if everything is possible, it's difficult to find the beauty in the simple things.
So let's get to a fan favorite segment called the Wild Business Shout Out of the Week.
The Wild Business Shout Out of the Week.
Wild Business Shout Out of the Week. This is where we talk about a campaign or marketing strategy that caught our attention. And there's lots and lots, seemingly every second, there's lots and lots more buzz about TikTok. And there's something about what they've done with their branding, their watermark, as well as on other platforms that impressed you. What do you have to share there?
Yeah. So when I got this question, I was just like, well, I couldn't really come up with a specific campaign that was just something new or something really impactful. And I think, and that's a hobby horse of mine, that I think the traditional campaign, the big campaign, TV, billboard campaign, it's not like it's dead, because it's of course still out there and it's still needed, as long as we need to have new products launched and new services launched as well. But I find that it's losing its kind of appeal. Of it's sometimes more a show for other people in marketing that is actually something that is impacting consumers a lot. And I think the traditional campaign, which used to be something like everything would be a campaign, is being more and more challenged or complemented, or at least there's another leg that you can stand on when it comes to actually bringing your brand out there. And I think TikTok did that with the marketing strategy, or the way that they positioned themselves as a participant in the social media networks. One thing that I'm sure has created a lot more impressions than any campaign that TikTok has done, or any campaign that Facebook has done, is pretty much just that TikTok made sure that any type of content, any piece of content that's produced on TikTok has their watermark branded on the content. So whatever you do on TikTok, it will always have a TikTok logo and a TikTok name in the video. That single thing, combined with TikTok not being afraid of opening their own profiles on Instagram and Facebook and a lot of other social media networks, basically as TikTok. And what they do on Instagram, well, they're sharing TikToks. And I think having that openness, but also I would say aggressiveness, to actually step into other social media networks platform, sharing their TikTok branded content, I'm sure that is way more impactful than any campaign that they've done. So I think companies, and I know that we did that a lot at Lego, thinking about the long-term impact and the long-term strategies that you can have, and creates a lot of impact with thinking about platforms, thinking about flows, thinking about peer-to-peer communication, and embedding your brand into a peer-to-peer conversation. I think that's something that winning brands and companies are going to focus a lot more on in the years to come.
I love the watermark example, because this idea of a watermark is so old. Like, I don't know the first person to watermark anything. I don't know the history of it, but like, people, the word and the use of a watermark on literally pieces of paper has been around forever. And so that same sort of thing can work in the digital space. And so they've executed that brilliantly. It's the same thing you see offline, like when you see a FedEx truck or a UPS truck and they have their logo there. And it's just, even if that's not like a particular paid campaign, but if you see that in the street, you're instantly thinking of that brand, whether it be consciously or subconsciously, every time one of those trucks drives by. Same thing with when somebody receives a package from Amazon in your apartment building and you go to check your mail and you see that Amazon, like the smile logo thing with the arrow. And so it's the same sort of thing that TikTok is doing, except TikTok is doing it in the digital space, and their willingness to go on these other platforms and say, okay, look, we're obviously another platform, but we're happy to be here too. And we're happy to share how cool our stuff is, on and X platform as well. Clearly has worked really well for them.
And can you imagine like how many brand impressions that single thing has done? Like, it's
No, like I think we need
absolutely
to
insane.
invent a new number, maybe.
Yeah, and I'm sure that no matter what kind of widening Kennedy campaign, it would have a fraction of that number of impression. So I think, again, it's about thinking about the trends, about the behaviors, and then embedding your brand into that consumer behavior in the right way. Then it's going to take off.
That's a magical formula. So you can buy that from Lars. No, I'm just kidding. All right, let's wrap up with some rapid fire Q&A. You ready for it?
Sure. Shoot.
All right. What is your favorite Lego set of all time?
It's an old space set from probably the 80s. I can't remember the number, but yeah, I've fought with my brother many times about that set.
Oh my God, yeah, that's another a side effect of Lego. Is everybody there's a lot of memories, especially as kids fighting with your sibling over it because the sets were so desirable. So that's really cool. I definitely had some space. I remember I had the Millennium Falcon from Star Wars. That was one of my favorites.
Yeah, you should have kept that in the box. That's worth a lot of money now.
I know that. Yeah, that could could a big investment. Little did I know at that age, could have had a big payout. I know you lived in Copenhagen for 10 years. What is your favorite part about the city of Copenhagen?
I think it's definitely the harbors and the canals in Copenhagen, because in the summer and you can basically, it's so clean in Copenhagen now that you can just take a swim in the inner harbor. So people are bringing their barbecues just to the canals, and there's a tons of canals. You've been there, and you just find your own spot, and then you just have a few beers, have some barbecue, go for a swim. Beautiful.
I got to say, when my friend Spencer and I were in Copenhagen, summer of 2019, we stopped there for just 2 or 3 days, but we chilled by the harbor for an afternoon. And the amount of people that were jumping in the water and renting boats and going by, like, it's just such a fun, playful, active atmosphere and energy to it. It's really, really unique. You don't see that in many cities.
No, you don't.
What is a new gear or gadget other than the Oculus one you mentioned that you're really excited about?
Well, I think Corona has made me have to invest in my own home studio, and I'm actually excited about this microphone I'm talking into right now.
I got to say, you sound beautiful.
Oh, thank you. It's a Rode NT USB mic, and I think actually, having spent a ton of time in the music industry with microphones and gear, I'm surprised about like how much great quality products you can buy now, and how easy it is to basically make things work. So yeah, so that's I'm excited about that right now.
It's a good one, and you can just hear it in your voice. You can feel it
And
in your voice.
I'm actually also excited about my new acquisition of a ring light, because it makes me look 5 years younger. So that's great as well.
Impossible. No, yeah. No, yeah, I've heard lots of good things about the ring light. And if you had to hear the same song played over and over again, like a popular song, it could be from your childhood, it could be from now. I guess you're only 5 years old. So what song would it be if you could only hear the same song over and over again?
So I would say what I've had this discussion with my dad many times, and we've for years tried to find what is the best track in the world, and still an undefeated number one is the Dry Cleaner from Des Moines, beautiful, with Joni Mitchell, which is a beautiful track. It has it all. Jacob Pastorius on bass, a beautiful track. So that's still, it's still up for discussion every time we see each other. But it's undisputed number one at the moment.
Awesome. I was not going to guess anything about dry cleaners or anything about a city in Iowa. So I appreciate the ingenuity there.
Yeah. So I would recommend check it out. The Dry Cleaner from Des Moines, Joni Mitchell.
Definitely. And we might need some narration on the track and your favorite parts from you with your sexy new microphone. Well, Lars, thank you so much. This has been great. Really appreciate you sharing your story and some of the awesome things that you created at the playful vibes at Lego. Where's the best place for people to connect with you?
I'm on, not surprisingly, I'm on pretty much all social media, from Instagram to WeChat to you name it. I'm always the same name, at Lars Silberbauer. I'm also on www.larssilberbauer.com. And if you want to connect with a company that I founded, it's called wave7.org, where we're also helping big companies with digital strategies and so on. So always happy to connect with anyone out there.
Perfect. Well, congrats on the new company. And I feel a special bond with you as being someone with also a last name that's a mouthful. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, Starbucks visits are always interesting.
But Lars, thanks again. And final thoughts. It could be anything you want. It could be a quote. It could be a song lyric, whatever you want. Send us off here.
I just hope that everyone is staying safe and doing their proper part in washing hands and wearing masks.
Thank you so much, Lars. And thank you so much, wild listeners. Until next time, let your business run wild.
Bring on the bongos!